Each runner mighty leader said, though we're outnumbered twice by head, I left them there for dead before the end of day.
The Society for Creative Anachronism, founded in 1965, is dedicated to the study and enjoyment of the culture of the Middle Ages, primarily in Western Europe. North America, Europe, and Australia have been recreated as over a dozen medieval kingdoms. Among the arts and sciences which members explore are medieval combat and armor, with wooden weapons identical in weight and handling to the original iron swords, maces, axes, and spears. This is a vigorous, full-contact sport. The ethical and social concept of chivalry is of the essence, as there are no referees. Each combatant decides if the blow he or she received would have slain an armored warrior of the 11th century. All titles are earned. Royal rank is achieved by winning tournaments held biannually to select kings and princes, who after completing their reigns become viscounts, earls, counts, and dukes. These tournaments often attract 30, 40, or more fighters. Strength, stamina, skill, and honor are required to win. Every February, the kingdoms of Caid and Atenveldt meet for medieval war. With armies numbering in the hundreds, each composed of groups of fighters loyal to their lords who are in turn loyal to their kings, the captain generals of the opposing forces have the opportunity for strategy and tactics. Here follow the commanders' meetings the night before the main battle.
Okay, the open field battle we thought of, out there, the problem we usually have with open fields here is no hard boundaries. Having again not taught sportsmen, I don't know whether we're going to fight the long axis or the short axis of the field. Again, we usually prefer to fight with narrow flanks and lots of depth, because traditionally we like to deploy a lot of depth. Atenveldt just the opposite, we like to have a lot of long flanks and fly around. Fighting for a long time with the Iron Brigade, and now we've adopted as the standard Army formation we fight. It's adopted in this diagram for the Allies being put in. The principle of the diamond is that the diamond allows for a lot of flexibility in movement, pretty much any direction by simple change of face. Any of these points could potentially become the nose of the diamond. Now, in this particular diagram, the nose of the diamond is facing, say, that direction. And this is the standard formation we'll deploy in throughout the weekend. Palantir and their allies will form the nose of the diamond. The right wing will be the outlands, I believe the 3 divisions. The left wing will be the combined Bucellary and White Lightning brigades of the Caid Army. The rear guard will be the 5th and 6th brigades of the Caid Army. And the center of the diamond will be the Iron Brigade. From appearance, it appears to be a very long, deep column. The gaps between these units are generally no more than 20 feet. So you almost catch some of the spear from either side. So it appears to be a very tight, compact. The only place where it's not tight and compact is deliberately left right here. These gaps will be left in the center. You invite the enemy to penetrate those gaps. The idea of our plan throughout the weekend will be simply to advance right to the enemy. Palantir is going right to the heart of the enemy. That'll force a hard decision on their command. Does he go wide either side? Or does he try to penetrate the middle, hit the gap? Or does he try to penetrate right in the middle by hitting Palantir frontally? Or any combination of the two? From the diamond-shaped formation, we have the advantage that we can always sally out against a flank attack to any of these gaps with the Iron Brigade. And any of these point gaps can simply turn and face the threat. Or I'm sorry, point units can turn and face the threat, wherever it is. Also allows this diamond-shaped formation a lot of attacks of our own. We can send far flanking maneuvers around the wing. We can refuse the wing and attack from the center. We have a strong reserve in the rear to commit to any localized endangered area. We have a lot of flexibility in this formation. Now, Atenveldt got a hold of this formation, and they've been practicing against it in last war practice. They had 200 fighters last week and a half here practicing on how to defeat the diamond. Our intelligence tells us that they're planning to use the attack through the gaps. Now, I'm going to show you what our intelligence tells us Atenveldt is going to try to do. They think the way to defeat this diamond is to pin the flanking units with skirmish teams of pikemen coming out to take in advance. Why another skirmish team of pikemen fights a retrograde action against Palantir, drawing the nose guard forward. If These units stop, and the point guard continues. What's going to happen? This unit will be isolated out here somewhere. These units will be delayed, and a large gap in the middle will develop. They might be able to defeat Palantir by circling out here. They might be able to isolate the wings. And to complete the maneuver, they have columns that bulk their forces, anywhere from 100 to 150 men each, who practice charging into these gaps.
They think if you stop the outlaws with a skirmish team.
We're not going out there because they don't have a baggage train.
Welcome to Byzantium. Now, the plan at that point is nebulous. It seems logical to then attack the Iron Brigade, but according to their own planning and our intelligence on their planning, at this point they plan on screening with, again, skirmishers, the Iron Brigade, while both these forces drive the Outlands and this brigade, combination brigades, out that direction, and isolate them out here and destroy them.
So their plan is to break the formation and defeat the
In defeated detail.
That sounds logical, doesn't it?
That's right.
I like the part where we stand there and watch.
Okay, here's an exploded diagram of that. So maybe over. Let's say the enemy penetrates the center like they're in theory planning to do. Skirmish team skirmishing against Outlands. Skirmish team skirmishing against the combined nuclear eye and white lightning brigades. And skirmish team skirmishing properly on several sides of Palantir. And I wouldn't be surprised if they try to draw you on by backing away from it. Now these assault columns that go into the middle are supposedly going to try to screen off Iron Brigade. I don't think they'll be suicidal and just charge into the Iron Brigade.
What will it be? That's the purpose.
That's true.
What is that, son?
Yeah, that's
that straight.
Sorry, you're crazy.
Okay, we're just going to move forward and roll right over the top of it. So we go left.
These bananas here represent the mass of those columns trying to penetrate and attack in this direction. Okay, obviously, as you can see, this creates filling pockets right through here. Filling pockets right through here. It is to our advantage to let them advance in those pockets. We don't want to do anything in the world to stop them from advancing. Under no conditions have your fighters block off or close off these gaps. As they come past, the Palantir is going to let them go on by. I advise all the commanders to have very secure interior and exterior flanks.
Units provide rear security.
Well, every brigade, every unit will be tasked to provide its own rear flank security initially. Now, in theory, as the plan progresses, all other units will support the rest of the army. And we'll go over some of the things we're doing in this. But initially, as they pour into these gaps, it's going to be real hairy. That's going to be the only scary moment is as they pour past Palantir. You've got to guard your rear and your flanks. Once they're in this filling pocket, it's going to be Christmas. It's going to be an incredibly dense, target-rich environment.
And you better get it done with too. Like real thing, you don't have time to dance with these guys.
That's going to discuss what you want to do with the entire outward side, right? That's huge. That's going to look more like here. That's going to be a pretty.
We're raising the right point. Here's what the plan is at this point. The subject change. Outlands, if we are facing this sort of attack, New Chorus will send a contingent of forces, probably roughly half, to close off the door, so to speak, and seal the enemy into the pocket. The fastest units of the Outlands army will be running around the flank, picking up these skirmishers and driving them off with Palantir as they go. Continuing on, they'll seal the door over here to the enemy. Roughly 60 men in the enemy's rear. The Fugolari White Lightning Brigade will shepherd the enemy into the pocket by moving out to their left and containing the enemy from moving out that direction to their left. The Iron Brigade, under Lord Mitchell, will take their target. They can either hit here or they get here. But then I'll be back here with the reserves with this one or two missions. If the Iron Brigade commits over here, I'll come in this way. If the enemy sends a flanking detachment, I'll move out to defeat the detail. So it just depends what the enemy does. But this will be the final reserve commit. That would be 56 brigade. Likely, if they do this plan they're talking about, most of their forces will be contained in the killing pocket and they'll grant the reserves, reinforce the left flank of Iron Brigade, and to join the nuclear array with the Iron Brigade and finish off the enemy in this particular topic. Okay, Sir Bella, give us some information on that.
To start this meeting, I stopped by the toll booth, and they checked the gas for the count for Caid, Dayton Dock, Army, for computer gave 504 Caid, 380 fighters. Signed up for Caid.
Without.
That's not include the Allies. Signed up for
That's
Caid.
not just us.
It's 504 Caid, 388 in Belgium, 70 uncommitted personnel. And they were behind about a stack of paperwork.
I'm always suspicious of these numbers since we're not the ones correlating. And you know, those that underestimate their own impact. Finally, javelins. Javelins are going to be used in every battle, only by heavy troops. I don't think we'll have any javelins on our side. I know Caid's didn't build a whole lot up. They like to I think we
So sorry, when we do a charge after a hole, we tell everybody, rise if you're able, we rise, and then they say lay on, we charge. You throw a whole volley of javelins over people's heads, staying with their faces, they raise their shields, they're not prepared to receive a charge. They are very effective in that one instance, everywhere else. But it's tough to throw a javelin with a 2-pound column.
Javelins thrown at a high trajectory don't do much good because when they come down, they have very narrow killing surface, killing area. Killing pattern. High trajectory is better if the missile guy can get behind it. Any other battle, it's the Bridge of Castle, javelins can be pretty much worthless. Moving too rapidly or fighting too close quarters in these battles, javelins can be effective. So I'm not too concerned.
You got Havoc, Red Orb, Black Rose, Inverted. You got Sutter, Red Orb, and we have Jongi and Barnick and Groot. And some of the pigs are supposed to be here. They're not counted though in that count.
Jerry, I understand that you're all one group, but it'd be really nice to have a breakdown of what your one group is. So it's like, you know, how many are inverted, this is like kind of like, depending on how these work out, it'll depend on how we set them up.
This was this unit, you can realize that Grant's and me and his guys are behind.
Yeah, we're
So we need to let people go around them. So let them go around them as much as they want.
Actually, follow up again.
If you do a collaborative defense, you start with a light unit, which will fall back into a heavier unit, and suddenly it's double its size.
You know, if we just don't take your policy way out less, then you can push the units over.
Once you get a big hole, we can drive right down there too.
Well, let me say this then, don't give it up immediately. Give it up, let them start coming around.
If we can send this straight in,
The big thing I don't want to have happen is I don't want this thing to hit people when it starts going around, because if this hits and this won't bend back, what'll end up happening is the center will hold still and these ends will bend back, and that's not what we want to do.
well, look at the gap in here, Brian, instead of over
We
here.
do have two gaps we can hit on it. The thing is, until we know their size, if they, okay, I'm just playing this out right now with that. If this thing goes bad, and we end up getting close and stand around with 200, 300 guys outnumbering us, which I mean, I'm saying, there's a lot of guys coming to the game tomorrow. This could happen. If we start playing this one where we're counting on enveloping them, we have less numbers, it'll backfire.
Yes, Jerry, we're doing a box. Open up the hole, let the artificials run in.
Slide them on one side, and go into the edge.
You guys go in, it's like open the door, punch in, roll in. Matt, your guys are gonna pin through. Okay, on the inside, it's like punch your hole, have your secondary groups wait in the back. So it's like once you get in, you know, the battle's gonna solidify in there, and you're gonna have all your guys in the back rank sitting there wondering what to do. So that's when your guys, if you can take a 10-man unit and have them shoot off at a 45-degree angle, you can open up Jerry's door, and now you got the whole 150 guys free, and we can crush them. We can crush them like bugs.
Last year, what ended up happening, we were able to take this unit through. We'll actually end up getting it. See, last year, what we ended up doing is punching through the center hole. We actually ended up here, and we were looking this way, and we were looking this way to see where we wanted to get.
Last year, I set up a picket line right here so Brian could roll in and squish it.
And it just opened up, and we stood there for about 10 seconds, looking around, going, well, which way do we
cowboys is when we go in, we're not going in and taking them straight up. We're going in and the thing's already going to be about 9/10 screwed up. So all of our cowboys can excel because it's not like this big nasty unit's going to walk in and try and play squishy with us. What we're going to get is the piecemeal people running and freaking out. And we really deal well with people running and freaking out. Okay, the thing is last year's successes are last year's successes. This year is a whole other animal. And we can't assume, if they have any sense, the enemy's going to stick a reserve unit in there. As soon as we punch, they're going to try and pop us in the teeth and stop us.
Yeah, big thing, guys. If you notice that you're getting any push at all, take advantage of it. The one thing I've noticed over the years, we're not taking advantage of times some of the opportunities we have from a purely psychological standpoint. You're not going to know them. And I just say this because whenever we get beat, it's because they grab a quick psychological advantage over us. And I'm saying if you see we're making forward progress, don't pull off your troops.
Keep going.
Keep going. Don't slow down because when you slow down, that's when they get their next class. If you would please relate to your troops, the biggest problem we have out on that field is when another commander of another unit goes over and tells another unit what to do, and there are 3 people out on this field that people should be listening to. His Majesty says move, move. If His Highness says move, move. And if I say move, move. That's it. Those are the only 3 people that you're listening to outside of your own unit. Other than that, think. Be smart about it. If you notice another unit's got a problem, help them out. But don't be going over and telling other units what to do. Because what you're going to do is you're going to end up standing there arguing and not getting anything done.
When they say go, go. If you sit there with your thumb up your ass, you're going to be waiting to kill somebody and there won't be anybody left. And a what?
And a what?
What?
Okay, everything in front of us is nice, steady pace. Never broke our formation. Just left across the field. If we break into a run, we won't.
Okay, then they're going to faster double time. If you need speed, you're going to be out there, and you're going to have to realize you're going to have to make a decision as to your speed. But once they say lay on, I want a hole in the middle, and I want the bad guys to go away.
The battle took place the following morning. All timeouts have been edited out. The army of Caid outnumbered the Akenfeld army by more than 3-2. Caid attacked the Akenfeld left flank with 2 moderate-sized companies. Sent skirmishers to attack Caid's left flank. flanks of the Adenvelt army, Caid attacked the center with 3 large companies. Was split in half. Its left flank, which had taken the heaviest attacks, was swiftly destroyed. The remainder of Caid's reserves assisted at the conclusion of the battle. This is Sir Gareth of Bloodline Gorge, speaking in House Bloodline Gorge at Estrella 8. And as my guest today, Sir Balin of Tor, Count of Caid, and Captain General of the Caidan Army. And also with us is Duke Armand Sévigny, who is the Chief of Staff of the Caidan Army, and former Captain General as well. Duke Sir Trelawn of the Wood, Captain General of the Armies of Adenvelt, and Viscount Master Ivan de Grey, Gentlemen of 20 years' experience in the command of armies, primarily in the Kingdom of Baden-Belt. How often do you schedule war practices? How do you run them?
We usually try to schedule war practices kingdom-wide for a year. And if you're lucky, maybe 3 of those will take place, and the 4th will be rained out. That's the way it works. And usually those war practices will be able to muster a third to a half of our army and get them out there. And what's important is to get the persons and the brigades which do not have regular training practices of their own out to these encounters. Meanwhile, other brigades, such as the Iron Brigade, will have bi-monthly or even monthly brigade practices where one Sunday out of the month or Saturday they get together and they'll do a brigade practice. They'll practice different tactics. They'll practice moving, healing, maneuvering, as well as fighting. And if you can get your troops to do that, that's great. Some of the other brigades are too far flung to effectively do this or simply unmotivated.
What kind of instructions have you given to your sub-commanders, unit commanders, barons, and to train their troops? How often do you want them trained, and what kind of practice do you want them to do?
I mean, a lot of the only groups that can have large practices and fight as large units are the groups from the Barony of Atenville. The other areas they just don't have the logistics to make it happen. They'll have smaller groups, but they might do like a 10 on 10 or something. Whereas here we can do 50 on 50 or more for that matter.
What are the skills that troops should have in war?
Well, a lot of it is having good vision, and awareness, because it's not the guy in front of you that's going to kill you more often than not. It's the guy that's off at a 45-degree angle with a pipe. That while you're looking at this guy, he's going to stick you in the jibs. The other thing you have to really work on is their stamina. Because a lot of the people, it's like, most of them are weekend warriors. They don't have the stamina, and they don't take care of themselves even when they are in battle, to maintain a full campaign. You want to get them used to the different weapons coming at them, get them used to having large groups of people trying to jump in their shorts with them. And also, too, you want them just to fight probably at least twice, 2-3 times a week. You can learn how to work as a team a lot quicker than you can build up your stamina. I mean, you will get the teamwork aspect of it will come just by the fact that you're there and you're working in your units. Because all of our groups are divided up into war bands, and those war bands combine into various units. And part of the problem with training is it's a volunteer organization. The coach won't kick you off the team if you don't go to practice. A lot of times you have to coerce your troops into training and fighting. Because it's like, the problem is you have a life to live, and you've got your household to run, and there's a whole lot of other things that come into play. You can't just devote your entire life to sword fighting, to battle.
How do you feel about hired troops?
Depends on if you have money.
Well, I mean...
or goods to barter with.
A cask of ale, a groat of silver is enough to buy a fighting man in most circumstances.
Groat of brass worth these days.
The one problem with hiring mercenaries is it gets to be a pretty expensive affair. If the kingdom could do it, then they've got the resources. But an individual trying to do it gets pretty steep sometimes.
The major groups that you draw, or that we have there, the Outlands and Caid, or Caid and the Outland, you're not going to be able to buy a significant number out of those particular groups. Then you have people coming from Anstiora, Antir, and so forth.
And at least 50 from Callantyre.
They generally will follow their liege lord, whoever is present at that time. There are individuals, small groups that show up as mercenaries, and I suppose if you made a concerted effort, you could gather them together, but again, until they reach a number of at least 100, they're not going to be a significant contribution one way or the other.
Australia never hired mercenaries and hired troops.
Never. We have friends and we have allies. We do not buy people.
I believe the Conqueror, 20% of his army were paid in cash at the start of the Age of Chivalry. And I believe there's one single historical fight in the Middle Ages in which hired troops did not play some sort of role, sometimes more significant than others.
We're closer to the national armies of the late Renaissance in Spain, for instance, or for instance, the classical armies of Greece and Rome.
We don't poo-poo the idea of mercenaries. It's just that we find when we're dealing not with mercenaries, we're dealing with other kings, other sovereigns, people who come here to fight for the glory of their crown, whether they be Hayden Felton or Verdiers or Palantir or the Outlaws, Frontier, and the rest of them. We would prefer to treat them as brothers rather than as hirelings.
I mean, the problem with a lot of these troops is you know, you've got a whole bunch of little bands that really, you know, it's very difficult to get them to work as a cohesive unit. So you've got a lot of little bitty groups instead of one big group. For example, like the Army of Cain, you have the Army of Cain, you have the Army of Baden-Belt, you have the Army of the Outlands. And the other groups that show up are basically war bands, and they just don't have the cohesiveness or the esprit de corps that the others have.
That brings it up to the brigade structure. Those war bands, which in the past didn't like each other and never support each other, were in 1987 brigaded into 5 brigades. Well, actually originally 4 brigades, and they became 5 when I became captain. And that's been a tremendous difference.
You still keep household structure and lines of fealty and
So they changed it, except now the Abbey and, for instance, Rothman hated each other back in 1987. We're now the closest of kin when it comes to fighting kids. And that's true of almost every brigade. Units that never fought together, fighting and practicing regularly together.
It allows us to bring in new war bands and assimilate them rapidly into the Army. They learn by example. And if you have one war band that is a particular weaponsmith, so like Spear Group or like Cavalry Group, we can't stand there and duke it out toe-to-toe with a heavy shield wall. You then supplement them with another unit, and so you have what we call mixed weapons groups, much like a modern brigade in an army, where you have some artillery, armor, and infantry, each one with their own special task, and knowing how to support and enhance the ability of the other units.
It certainly seems that over the past 5-6 years, the number of 9-foot poles out there has increased, and now there really are pole companies. What do you think was the cause of that?
Back in 1986, we began a drop-in, which is part of the 9th Brigade then and now, an experiment, which was to isolate all the spearmen into a special unit called Wolfman. The idea of which would be you have men in any good condition, and you couldn't get in the unit unless you were in good condition. The run all day, and was skirmish with 9-foot spears. And it was almost Mongolian horse archer tactics as we fought them. They would hit and run all day. And anytime they were charged by the heavier Anglo-Saxon style shield wall, they just pull away. As soon as the shieldmen went tired, they'd come back in and harass them again with a 9-foot spear. Now the spear was a substitute for bow and arrow. We couldn't use bow and arrow, we used 9-foot spear, and we chose 9-foot spears because, unlike a blade, unlike a sword or shield, you can stay at 9 feet plus of range. That gives you enough time to get out of there when he charges you. That's the pure reason 9-foot are so successful. Now, Wolfman was originally, no one thought it would work. It was poo-pooed as an idea that would never fly. And within a year or two, they convinced the tractors of back earlier.
How do you deploy all pike units in a field battle? Or do you?
We don't have any deployed.
We don't use all pike units, you know, because if you have, I prefer to have a mix, because with a mix you've got enough, you know, you have enough shieldmen to stop the people from rushing your pikes and allow your pikes to work, but you also have enough pikes to protect your shieldmen. And if you just have all pikes, then they're fine. It's, you know, they've got a lot of offense, but their defense is real weak. So if you can, I mean, you can send 3 guys against a 10-man pike unit, and they'll decimate it.
If they can
And
get through the
all they
front.
got to do is get past the points, and they will just chew them apart.
Which did you have more of, shields or spears?
We had more spears in general. Fairly 50-50 mix, but I think we were slightly higher on spears.
Do you think it made a difference?
I think it did. We definitely were able to pull their shieldmen forward and then kill them off. They were not capable of bringing their spears in as often as we did. We had a more flexible line.
Have you ever faced mass pikes with your pikes?
Yes, I have. And? In an open field, our shields do well. On a bridge, the pikes will definitely prevail.
When I'm out there commanding, And I spent all my time running around from one point of the battlefield to the other with 3 staff colonels in tow. So when I see a situation, I can either send them or I can pull myself to a situation where command is necessary. I think it's my feeling that anytime a commander is fighting with a sword and shield in hand, in the forefront of the attack, he's not doing his job as a commander.
I normally end up in the reserve, so it's like myself and my household. With that, we've got enough firepower in there to make sure what I want to happen happens. And as far as making the decisions on the battlefield, I never really had a problem making a decision on the battlefield when we were young.
The only time I ever got a shot in the war is when I was in charge once in the first war. I was captain general by a unit that squeezed the gap in the line, and that was it. But generally, I feel if I'm throwing blows, I'm not doing my job.
Tell me about how you use reserves and whether or not your use of reserves was modified by the fact that that's extraordinary numbers on us.
Reserves, whichever army has them, and when they commit is when they decide to win. One of the tenets of Holland, he was captain general, said, whoever throws in the last reserve always wins. So it is a hallmark of the Canadian Army that they always keep great number of troops in reserve throughout the battle, and with them when necessary. And the captain general only has so much ability once the battle actually begins. Once the troops are actually in combat, you have no control of them whatsoever. Unless they're in reserve, unless they're out of the fight, they're ready, they're fresh, ready to go. This weekend, with the numbers we have, we keep up to minimum 60 men always on reserve.
A lot of times, your reserves are almost end up what you get left with, because you're putting critical units in critical places, and they've got all their jobs to do. And so when all that's done, then you look around and see what's left. But normally, you want to keep about a third of your troop as your reserve, because otherwise you don't have enough to make an impact in a battle.
One questions whether the context of a reserve unit when you're outnumbered also. Every man has to do double duty, and trying to hold something in reserve when you're outgunned on the line, it's almost an oxymoron, as it were. Their reserve was probably half the size of our army.
Usually speaking, once they are committed, if their unit survives any killing integrity at all, it's very difficult to call that unit back from its assignment or to redirect it unless it's a breather in the battle.
For a big part of my job out there is to watch units that are stalled or met their objectives and don't know quite what to do next. So either I or my staff colonels, which I got trained, will watch the battle, run over where we have Nazi troops that are doing nothing, and give them back in the battle. Redirecting troops after they achieve their objectives, a big part of the army to continue the attack time and again after they won one portion of the battle.
Supposing the numbers were reversed, well then, would you attempt to keep a reserve even if you were badly outnumbered?
Sure. Whether you're outnumbered or not, you have to have reserves. Once the battle's laid on, if you don't have reserves, they pull something you didn't expect. And you're always going to be able to do that if you have more men than you do. Always will spend at least additional units beyond your flank. You gotta have reserves.
Given the situation, the circumstances, and the scenarios that we were in, you have to do the best you can with what you have. And holding a third back for the final onslaught, as it were, contextually doesn't quite ring true, I guess you could say. The current society stratagem has you putting your more elite units in the reserve capacity. However, we had a situation in this last engagement here, I think it was Saturday, where we had a unit from Antier, was it? That basically became impatient and took off after some bait that was put out there before them, and summarily were executed by the opposing side.
Was there any way to communicate with them once the battle had begun?
How do you argue with the king?
Difficult.
It's very difficult when he's from 1,000 miles away. He doesn't care what you think. And him and his 50 guys are going to go have a good time, and wherever it looks good is where they're going to go.
And this is, again, you start talking about morale, about the fact that you are outnumbered, you psychologically feel that your options are limited. And an army that gets cautious is outnumbered, and if Hunter is down
depth and narrow positions, has given up all initiative to the enemy. We can pick and choose who we're going to hit and how hard. Now, if that army has area into which it can retreat and fall back as it is killing the enemy, then that's fine. Its flanks are protected. Adenvelt had the unfortunate problem of, on that open field, in order to get a line small enough for them to cover their flanks, their backs were right up against the wall. And they had nowhere to go. And it was sort of like the Goths at Adrianople, hitting the Legions. They were hemmed in, and they gave up the initiative.
One of the problems was that we had the same situation that the French had at Agincourt, with a number of leaders who wished to simply go out and enjoy their prowess on the field, regardless of the campaign as a whole.
I don't think I'd compare it to Agincourt, because the French actually were playing it rather smart until they actually got to the field itself, and then they kind of blew it off. But
that could describe Adenvelt, though, exactly.
No, again, Adenvelt was in, if you want to compare it to Agincourt, Adenvelt was in the English position there without the benefit of positioning 2 weeks of rain and 4,000 archers, I believe.
Caid besieged the castle with lines of pikemen along the walls and companies outside the main gate and the postern gate, preventing Adenvelt troops from exiting to attack them from the rear. 37.5 minutes after the siege had begun, Caid attacked the castle through a breach in the wall. Note the javelin attack as the fighters rush in. Securing the breach and sending about 1/3 of the army in, Haid pressed the Ortevelt army toward the rear of the castle, allowing the rest of the attackers to enter. Had to defend a castle this war, and it was extremely difficult, and it didn't seem that we had much of a chance from the start. Could you explain the story of how this particular battle came about and how the castle came to be designed the way it was?
Well, basically we were allowed to design the castle the way we wished, and then once we got the castle designed, the enemy didn't like the way it was designed. They wanted breach holes, and they wanted another door, and the other thing too is our castle was too small, because we really couldn't do anything in there. I mean, we got everybody in there, but you were just all so bunched in, you couldn't even fight. And it was...
This castle was designed by the enemy commanders. It was designed...
Well, after all, it was their castle you were attacking.
It was designed to be infamous. And it was. And we would not have attacked it if it was smart to happen in the real world. So we spent long time negotiations to get them to agree to have a breach in the wall to allow the castle to continue. Or to have a scenario set up so that we would defend it after they did, and we'd fight two castle battles. Now, it was, frankly, only possible to take. We both find that. So the compromise reached that we'd have a breach, and at 37 minutes we dropped. So for the first 37 minutes, that's why we didn't do any concerted attacks. As soon as that breach went down, though, we had a strong column of some 30 men deep. 3 distinct units went in that breach.
The castle itself was physically restrictive, and we restricted ourselves even more by basically leaving a lane between ourselves and our curtain wall, which was supposed to be our curtain wall.
Did you consider a sally?
Couldn't get out quick enough in large enough numbers to do anything either.
If I remember correctly, we were totally surrounded.
Yeah, and they had people waiting.
Not much room to sally out there, and
yeah,
again...
that was one of the problems with this castle battle is, we were outnumbered enough to where normally you'd think that them being on the outside and the perimeter, they have more ground to cover, but
They didn't have any problems doing that.
they had enough guys to where they could cover it.
It did seem that there was the Calentarian forces and their associated fighters at the postern. It was a very small part of your army. It looked like it was no more than 50 men back there total. Were you at all concerned about a major sally from the castle outside and swing around, run around like crazy and attack from the rear?
I would have been worried had it not been the fact they constructed the castle in such a way as to make it impossible to get in or out. They basically sealed themselves up in there. That side port was so narrow that they would have to come out one man at a time. And we could easily plug up just down here. So had they made the side port a more viable side port, both for us to attack into and for them to attack out, I would have had to put more men.
And again, a sally is a tactical decision made based on circumstances that you see and timing and taking advantage of an opening on the other side. There weren't any openings. There was no nighttime. There was no
nothing of benefit.
Movement there on their part to leave us an opening or create an opening. If we'd wait until they all went back to the camp and started eating, we could have sallied out and been rather successful.
Sarah was set up so that at the end of 37 minutes, a breach would drop within the gates, or within the walls. We could choose before the scenario, we could choose where on the walls we would like a section of the walls, 3 feet those wide, to drop. Until that dropped, there was no way into the castle. There are 2 very tiny solid ports which you could squeeze through, one of which I knew had to crawl up on their knees to get in.
Do you think it was a bad plan? Do you think it should have been a regular human-sized gate that at least someone holding a sword over their head could have gone through without bumping?
I certainly think it would have shortened battle.
Would you have attempted to break through a gate if it was easy to do?
You know, you look at each castle, and so it's constructed generally by the marshals, look at each castle individually.
Having talked to commanders, several of them between battles, about this particular battle, one of the factors that they felt worked against them was that when the wall was breached, there had been orders given, and this is again second-hand, for certain units of their army to immediately attack once the Haitian army stepped on or over the hay bale. So in other words, you catch the enemy as they're trying to precariously go through the door, and then you throw them back out. You let them get that first step, and you hit them. If you delay to the second or third step, you've lost your timing. And apparently there was that delay. And the units that were supposed to throw out the original assault forces did not do so. They were unable to for one reason or another. And I think in the minds of some Eagle commanders, that probably is what cost them. Once the initial breach was secured by our troops and we started filtering troops around to cut them away from the walls and to link up the penetration in the gate with the penetration of the wall.
That turned about and it was going to
A big factor there, as Armand said, was that the captain had a debt of Mentis at the breach, because the hay bales in that breach would have been obstacle to him.
It's clear that the problem about doing so is a wall of 9 footers directly adjacent to the breach trying to keep people down. They would have to make a sort of tortoise, basically, to get to that hole.
Or have their own pikes support them on the wall. That's a big factor, too, is our pikes around that wall were able to keep them away from the breach. So no devaluing those pikes, that pike support. There's no underestimating how valuable that is.
Now, what would you have done if you'd been inside the castle?
Well, the first thing I would have done is kept away from the, as they did, away from the walls. Dueling over the walls when you're on the inside is about the useless. So I would have done that. That's the one thing I saw they did right. The second thing I would have done is, as soon as that breach was dropped, we would have been a heavy unit blocking that breach so that the hay bale was on the ground would have been out. And in no way in the world would I block the enemy to take the gate as well.
Any army that gets across a bridge wins. They're able to, once they have gotten across a bridge, they're able to usually send enough troops through that bridge to cause basically an attack on 2 sides.
That's normal. That's true, and that, like you started to say, it normally happens in the end game. The problem is if you do it in the middle game, the bad guys still have enough guys to stop you. You know, you can make a punch, you can get over to their side. They haven't, you know, they can still bottle up the other 2 bridges, and they've got enough of a reserve force that can turn around and just about, you know, unless you can put everything in there, and they'll just push them right back out.
But in most bridges where you don't have an objective of holding the center line, as this weekend we did, you can attritionate the enemy with better pipe cooling techniques. The key to most bridges is who can outskirmish the enemy on the bridge, eliminating his screen of pipe. Once you've done that, their showmen are very vulnerable to being attacked by skirmishers. So we pride ourselves in having the better skirmishers who go up there, will take away their screen after, it might take an hour, 45 minutes, 30 minutes, as soon as we go off for a pipe. And at that point, we have the advantage.
What do you think is more effective on a bridge, to send vast pikes and try to push their way across, nibbling the shields away, or heavy troops to?
No.
And what is it?
It's a mixture of both. It's like if they've got pikes out there, you better get shields out there and jump them. If you know, and it's just like if you watch the dynamics of a bridge battle, you'll see, you know, they all set up, they'll get positioned. You know, once all the dust clears, then the pikes will come out and they'll start poking and then it's all a matter of you can make all the pikes go away just by bringing the shields up and rushing them, because you know, as soon as you rush half a dozen pikes, they're going to get squished. And it's just, you end up just playing this whole scenario over and over and over again. And it's just a matter of you know, a lot of times you might want to suck them back, or they might want to try and suck you back into a horseshoe position. So it's just it just depends on what you're facing and what works well. Most of the time in bridges, charges don't work that well unless it's like a pulse charge. You can go in, you can hit them, and then you step back. And in all the confusion, then you can get some kills. But just trying to go in and push, you actually normally end up taking more casualties than you give.
Did you like the way the scenario was set up?
I like the line.
As opposed to fighting the last man or whoever controls the other side?
We prefer, and for several years we've been asking to have almost this exact scenario. I think one of the problems troops have fighting bridge battles is you wait, and a dozen to 2 dozen men on each bridge do all the fighting for an hour and a half until finally one side or the other breaks and goes screaming forward, usually to defeat. Which means it's a very boring battle for the troops. And by making the object of holding certain portions of that bridge, either for certain segments of time or in conjunction with one another, make that the object of the battle, forces both armies then to continually fight for dominance on that bridge, on all of the bridges.
How do you feel about the use of missiles in general and how they were used in this war?
In this war, it was rather interesting because Qaid really didn't hardly use missile weapons at all. They kind of seemed to turn their noses up at them, although they did use them a little bit. But they, it was the first time we've used them a lot. We learned a lot from that. So in the future, I think there'll be a lot more to be reckoned with. And also, too, it's just like I said, there weren't that many of them. I think you're going to see greater and greater numbers of missile weapons being winged about in our wars to come.
It's my experience with the SCA missile weapons, and not so much common archery as javelins, that they're only good if the enemy is standing there flat-footed, that's an easy target, and he is not preoccupied with anything else. So when it hits him, he knows it's going to hit him.
Now, I did see a flight of missiles thrown in just like within a minute of the attack of the breach. Was that just supposed to be did you plan that?
Yes, that was we color fire. For about the first 15 minutes, we threw javelins. We noticed we were losing the javelin exchange. So we ceased all fire, gathered our missiles, and at the dropping of the breach, we received the attack of the volley missiles.
Was that just to confuse and annoy the enemies? As a distraction? All you need is 10 seconds, basically.
For instance, I think the missiles used on the bridges were far more effective because you can fire into the flank of an enemy who is preoccupied attacking forward. You had marshals there to tell him if he was hit, if he didn't know it. And again,
I saw many more people fall off the bridge.
Yeah, and that's really the ideal scenario for missiles.
We found with like the archery and the javelins and whatnot is they've got such a limited range. Javelins are really only effective maybe 20 yards, maybe 30 on a good day. Archery isn't that much better. I mean, the arrows that we're using and the poundage of the bows, we can put them out there maybe 50 yards. I mean, and your effective range is maybe 30, 20.
That is one of the problems on all the projectiles that we use. is that they're very, very readable in the air. You've got enough time, if you're any length or any distance at all from your opponent, to see it coming and step aside. Where the javelins seem to be effective is individuals using them and picking targets, surprising people with them.
I think missiles actually hurt Aitkenveld in the first open field battle yesterday because they hurled them at our troops. As we approached, we were fairly confused. We could bat them down. Our troops gathered up the missiles, and then when we hit Aitkenveld, socked in where they were wedged so deeply they couldn't move, we hurled them back in a volley. And
I saw this like the first arrow storm really that I'd seen in SCA combat.
All your kill is fine.
there was no way to avoid it.
Society tactics, the way they're practiced now, are largely Napoleonic. Would you agree with that?
Yes and no. I think when you look at the way Napoleon ran the columns versus the lines, for instance, you're talking about shock versus firepower. We have certain things we cannot do that Napoleonic armies can do. And so there's a limitation of comparison.
How about it just in terms of way of organizing units, planning blocks of men moving in a certain way?
Definitely.
It's more Napoleonic than, for example, the Greek.
More Napoleonic, but also perhaps more of the ideal army would be units of 10, formed to be units of 100, formed to be units of 1,000, which of course is modeling. And some of our tactical structures, because of the facility of command given by certain ways of putting your troops on the field, are Napoleonic.
We have some aspects of the Napoleonic Army. And the fact that we have a staff that decides things, that have individual jobs, is that Napoleon was the one that first started doing that, at least that we know of. But in a lot of other respects, it's not very Napoleonic at all.
Many times,
more Roman than anything.
Many times, particularly mobile troops in our armies are referred to as cavalry.
Yeah, they just want to be cavalry. Yeah. People running on foot.
There are people running on foot, but there are many fighters who are, very solid, plantable types who are very
Fat
good.
is the word you're looking for.
Slow and fat.
Well, there are those who are fast, and those who are slow, and those who are particularly solid and good, and those who are good at charging into a line. Certainly, it's not inappropriate to designate the more fleet troops as cavalry, and
it's terribly inappropriate. First of all,
they don't have near the shock, they don't have the speed.
And again, it depends on what period you're talking about the use of cavalry, because, for instance, in medieval tactics, the mounted horse charge was the quintessential expression of that type of warfare, whereas when you get into later periods and the cavalry becomes penetration and harassment units, distractions, and then again it becomes a more of a centerpiece of the game plan. It varies throughout history.
you're asking an army to use Napoleonic tactics and still live a chivalric life.
We're also asking them to fight without horses. You really can't put a medieval army in the field and have them fight medievally unless you're going to put them on horseback.
The War of the Roses was fought on foot by knights and nobles in full armor without the support of peasant ladies. They rode battle, got off, and fought. I mean, it's not as though it's not well known. Nobody wanted to kill the peasants, of course, because then they would be upset with the victors.
I think a lot of the way in which we rush into battle would probably be more reminiscent of the War of the Roses. But that was done because by that time it was realized there were certain weapons on the field that made cavalry charges, and certain fields in which cavalry charges could not be made. But that was very hazardous. You don't go charging into bombast with cavalry. You don't go charging into hordes of archers unless you're French cavalry. And those factors really help determine, get the knights off their horses. We call certain units here light cavalry because of the function that they perform. We're much closer, I think, and of course no one knows because no one can go back and see how they actually fought back then. We're probably much closer to those days in the late portion of the Dark Ages when the Franks fought other persons who were not adapted cavalry at that time, just before the introduction of the stirrup in Western Europe. But after the fall of the Roman legion, certainly we don't take much from the Eastern Empire, which rapidly became cavalry.
The Wars of the Roses, where
No.
nobles rode to battle, fought on foot, and the wars were done almost entirely by the nobility.
That may be closer to it. Again, they still had artillery, and I don't. And again, they still had mounted troops, regardless of whether or not the nobles got off and fought on foot. I'm sure there were a few of them that decided not to.
While we all strive to have a persona and that's a period, here we are trying to win the war as best we can by using strategy and tactics that is clearly not a period.
I don't know. I think strategy and tactics in the Middle Ages is often denigrated. But if you look at successful commanders, whether it's Richard the Lionheart or Frederick Barbarossa, who was probably more known for his defeats and his victories, or many of the other medieval commanders, you'll note a certain tactical sense. And they had to deal with troops of a certain psyche and a certain training level and a certain ability. And many times they had to deal with integrated arms. And so I think to that degree, the only thing we've done is we've benefited from the wisdom of commanders who come afterwards, whether it was Wellington, Napoleon, we understand certain things, we have terms for certain things that a medieval commander would have to understand intuitively in order to perform those things, whereas we now conceptualize things. We turn it into a philosophy, into an art form. For them, it was, this works or this doesn't work. The only problem for medieval commander is that occasionally when something didn't work, you didn't get a second chance. You were dead, you were finished.
We're not employing period tactics. Do you think that's good, bad, indifferent? Do you think that if perhaps that we...
It depends on which army you used as your example in period. And the thing is people have always used every asset that was available to them in warfare. I mean, the guy, even in the Middle Ages, there were guys wandering around with Greek and Roman texts on warfare. So it's, when you say, period, it's like, who are you talking about? Are you talking about the professionals? Are you talking about the nobles who are out there screwing around?
Well, are we closer then, for example, to the Greeks who had swords and shields and spears primarily?
Darn, a lot closer to the Greeks than we are to the French.
Or the Romans. I mean, we don't, of course...
Byzantine, perhaps?
Well, the Romans did most of their fighting on foot. I mean, they had some cavalry. But, the thing is we don't... Even then, it's like a Roman legion, they spent 5 years training before they ever went into battle. And then when they did go into battle, they went in with an experienced unit, and they'd work them in. It's like you'd have an experienced line, and you'd have an inexperienced line. And the experienced guys would go up and soften them up. They'd fade back, the new guys would come up, they'd get blooded up a little bit, then they'd move back. So it's like they put a lot of time and effort into training their troops. And
have you ever attempted to have your sub-commanders here simulate that?
The problem we have with that is just about the time you get about halfway through a switch, the bad guys will jump on you and beat the tar out of you.
Or if you are going to give advice to any prospective commanders of medieval armies in the current Middle Ages, what would you tell them? That's where you start with.
Know your troops, know what they can do, and know what they can't do. Never ask them to do something that they cannot achieve. And express unity and training and discipline. Timing is everything, and audacity is everything. That's my input into that.
I would say that the first thing is to keep it simple. I was in the Army for 8 years. The acronym is KISS.
Right, keep it simple, stupid.
That's it. That's the first one. Keep it simple. Whatever plan you have won't work for this new company. The second thing, keep in mind, is always watch your rear. And that follows the third thing, which is always keep reserves. The man wins who has the last fresh reserves to throw in.
What advice would you give to the commander of an army in the modern Middle Ages?
He who has the most guys wins. And always, he who has the last reserve wins.
My advice would be that basically, I think the key is in training, organization, trying to get as much discipline as you can out of it, a militia essentially, and communication. Any one of those aspects are a mile wide, so anything that you can shave a hair off of, you've made an accomplishment or accomplished something there. Hang in there, be patient, and if something doesn't work, well, be willing to admit that it didn't work and try something new. Yeah, exactly.
Pinzik looks like a tea party. Estrella looks like a bar fight. Neither description is totally accurate. But until everybody gets together and finds out that we're not animals out here and we're not sissies out there,
right,
that I think people are going to realize that both sides of the United States have very good armies.
The best part about fighting a war is the pickup fights after the war points are over. Sometimes it's extemporaneous, sometimes, well, it just happens. It just happens. Somebody will take the bridge, and somebody else will want the bridge, and then, well, one guy has a friend, and then the other guy has a friend, and the next thing you know, you've got 500 people fighting on a bridge for no particular reason except to fight. Now, what we did today is we had a fight, and when the fighter died, he resurrected and went to the other side. This enables the fighters to get to know each other on different levels, on different strategies, and take the us versus them out of the war situation so that nobody gets hurt. We fought for 2 hours, pick-up battles, we had 1 injury. Because these guys are friends and they're fighting each other and they're not wanting to hurt each other. So that's the fun of war.
Hasten thou to land of the sun, where on your field your army lies crushed and broken. An army of 400 men went on the field that day to face the armies of Caid, their mortal enemy. Be strong, their mighty leader said, though we're outnumbered twice by head. And Caid left them there for dead before the end of day.
Across the grassy field they stood, the Caid's huge army, and swarmed down on the 8 men like hives of angry bees. As pole and shield the Caid wheeled, the 8 men fell to the field, and not a man was left to yield before the end of day. Hear the women wail and weep, the babies mournful cry, their brothers, husbands,